Many of us figured that the beat-em-up was pretty much dead after the 2D era ended. The 3D beat-em-ups have mostly been quite bad, but along comes a good one in God Hand from developer Clover Studios that recently delivered excellent games like Okami, and before that, Beautiful Joe. This new game maybe lacks some of the very distinct sense of style of those other games, but it's still got a lot of great action, and it's basically one of those games that has a pure focus and does one thing, which is have you beat up thugs in a variety of ways very, very well. It's a challenging game that's definitely got a learning curve to it, but once you get over that hump and you start to realize how to string together some really nasty combos and all kinds of different crazy special moves, it starts to become a whole lot of fun. It takes about 30 seconds to realize that God Hand does not take itself seriously, is not going to set you up for a particularly cohesive or elaborate plot. Basically, you're this guy named Gene who's got a god arm. It's not just a hand.
Give up the God Hand, now!
Only thing I'm giving up is an ass kicking.
But we want the arm!
It's got some magic power in it, makes him real tough. Other guys want it. He wants to beat them up anyway because he's got a score to settle. Basically, it's you fighting a whole bunch of weird gangs, occasional demons, weird killer clowns, pro wrestling apes, kind of a variety of different foes. There isn't much in the way of story, but there are some really amusing cutscenes nonetheless that crop up in between the game's bite-sized levels, which comprise more than half a dozen rather large stages. In fact, this is a surprisingly long game for a pure beat-em-up. The stages look different from one to the next, and you'll fight different enemies and so on. You'll also hear all kinds of different music, almost all of which is just really, really good. Weird surf rock, all kinds of stuff that seems wildly inappropriate right at first, and then turns out to be totally excellent. However, the stages are all pretty much the same. It's you going from room to room, clearing them out of maybe 4, 5, 6 bad guys at a time. They're all tend to be pretty tough guys who can take a good amount of damage, and it's you getting real up close and personal, hitting them with various punches and kicks. But the gameplay is a little awkward to get used to at first because the camera is locked right behind you, and the right analog stick controls all your dodging. Gene can't actually block. Other enemies will block your attacks all the time, but Gene can only dodge kind of Matrix-style little avoiding moves and also backflips, which make him temporarily invulnerable. So you'll have to use these all the time when you're not dishing out the damage yourself. The result is really a manic pace to the action where you're just laying into the opponents, hammering on the buttons, dealing as much damage in a short amount of time as you can, and then feverishly trying to get out of the way when they counterattack. This may seem kind of spastic at first, but the game absolutely rewards precision, and it's even got a dynamic difficulty system in there so that just when you start to get a little bit cocky as to how well you're doing, all of a sudden the game is going to get harder, the enemies will start hitting you harder, and kind of take you back down to earth. The end result is that you're going to have these levels where you just barely scrape through, and that's really actually a satisfying feeling when you get through a level like that. What helps keep things interesting all the way through this game is that even though you're fighting the same types of enemies over and over, you yourself are acquiring more and more moves all throughout the game. In fact, there are like more than 100 different various punches and kicks that Gene can acquire, and you're free to map these to the face buttons on the controller however you choose. You've got unblockable moves, and you've got moves that launch guys up into the air. These are all motion captured and really look great. On top of that, you've got these special moves that you can use from time to time that have some really wild effects and can really help get you out of a pinch. And then you've got the good old God Hand itself, which you can unleash from time to time, in which case you could just deal out a ton of unblockable damage. That'll often dizzy the guy, and then you can unleash even more damage and kind of rinse and repeat from there. It's definitely a process, but it's a fun process, and it's constantly keeping you on your toes. God Hand is one of those games that does a pretty good job of speaking for itself, really. It's a game about beating people up. If you've enjoyed classic games like Final Fight or Double Dragon, and you think that the days of games like that are long gone, then you're probably going to love this game. And its graphical style seems like a clear throwback to Fist of the North Star, which is probably going to be a favorite among many people who kind of enjoy stylized acts of beating people up, such as those of this game. And really, all in all, God Hand is not trying to be ambitious or anything, but the thing that it focuses on, these close combat acts of sheer carnage, but without blood, but with plenty of knocking people into the stratosphere and stuff like that. It does those things really well. If you're up for a challenge, you want to play a game that's going to really tax your skills, maybe even cause you to break a sweat, this one is definitely worth a look.